Good morning and welcome to your new school. Let me introduce you to your teacher, Mrs. Johnson.
Your teacher's been here since the early morning, hauling in the coal for the stove and preparing her materials for the day.
Bring your lunch. Be ready to learn your ABCs. We'll study about the world outside. And each day starts with the Pledge of Allegiance.
There will be no discipline problems. We follow the Ten Commandments. There's not a lot of comfort, but we have the latest materials to study reading, writing, and arithmetic. Your classmates will be nice, courteous, and of all ages.
Where are the students? It's 9 o'clock. Let's check our calendar. Maybe there's no school today. September 2000.
Maybe somewhere in America there's a one-room schoolhouse, but here in Barnes County, these schools are long since closed. The exceptions are those that are preserved within the walls of this museum. The Barnes County Museum is located in downtown Valley City, North Dakota. The curator is Wes Anderson.
Here is Wes talking about Barnes County's one-room schools.
The school exhibit was set up through the courtesy of the Partners Internship Program through Augsburg College in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They hired Matt Taylor as an intern for us, and he researched one-room schoolhouses in Barnes County and came up with not only this photographic display, but also the installation display, as you see. There's really not one particular school represented, but many schools, and it's just the general theme of a one-room schoolhouse. Students, when they come through here, enjoy learning about the fact that there was grades 1 through 8 in one single classroom with one poor teacher, probably about 18 years of age, maybe adult men in the back of the classroom who were immigrants that were learning English. In here, the pictures, I guess if we start with those first, represent many schools from around Barnes County, at least the existing ones. The gist of the program through PIP, Partners Internship Program, was to capture the remaining structures as they are. And these are the ones that Matt Taylor found. We have Sibley Trail up here, which is up by Daisy. And our president, George Allman, attended this when he was a young boy. It's in rough shape right now, and I don't know how many years it'll be left standing, but interesting about it is down here is the blackboard. When our blackboards were brought in for our exhibit, they were the new blackboards that were put over old blackboards. And so behind the new ones that were brought to the museum is the existing old ones, and on the old blackboard is still a lesson from the 1920s. Kind of a unique thing to capture. If we go a little bit over here, there's Ashtabula Township School, 4-H Hall, not really used too much anymore. Up here is Hames number 10. This has been moved into Valley, and it's at Pioneer Park right now. It's used as the warming house for ice skating. Over this direction is a one-room schoolhouse from Wimbledon, North Dakota. Technically came from Stutzman, but we'll just count it because they've moved it into their museum and restored it, and they've done a very good job. Down here is from Ariska. It's I don't remember which number it was, but it's Ariska, and it's now Helmer's Bar, so technically it's still teaching basic anatomy. Down here, this is from Minnie Lake School. The story behind this is when Mr. Taylor joined our program to research these schools, his first school on his list was Minnie Lake. And the day before he got up there, it was hit by lightning and burned to the ground. And so all that's remaining is the school ground equipment. Over here is King School. This is on the Catherine Road heading south. It has been restored lovingly and is used as a outlet for handy goods and kind of a community coffee center. So it's very much well respected and kept up. And let's see, over here we have the Nelson School, also further down on the Catherine Road. Unfortunately, is a bit more neglected. The museum has kind of taken over a little bit of care for this. We've boarded up the windows, and some people noticed that the old Barnes County Museum sign is used to patch up the windows, and it's kind of a preventative against vandalism and birds. Okay. In this exhibit, we have many classrooms represented, but the recitation bench, where classes were taught over the course of the day, and the desk and chair came from Oriska, which is probably now Helmers. The little school desks are from St. Catherine's School here in Valley City. The larger ones, I believe, came from the King School, and then there might be from Fingal and from Nome, the other smaller desks. The map case is from Sibley Trail. This was in the schoolhouse where the chalkboard was obtained from. Maps were very expensive in their day. To have a map case was from a very wealthy school. And these date probably from the 19 teens, 1920s. In here you can see, well, the post-World War I Europe, and existing here is probably the rarest example of a country is White Russia. And that was just for a brief time after World War I. We have the phonics table over here, which is kind of coming back in education. We have the Funk and Wagnall Encyclopedia set from 1912. We have original children's work from the 1930s. This map represents all the schools in Barnes County in 1910. It was prepared by Matt Taylor. Barnes County, of course, 42 townships, and within them were the numerous schools within walking distance of children. And each pin represents a one-room schoolhouse.
The time for these schools has ended. We may romanticize this era, but not all children were given an equal opportunity for an education.
Benedict Walsh, a student in the early 1900s, wrote, "Only little children too small to pitch a bundle, swing a shovel, or milk a cow showed up at school at that season of the year. Likely there were laws then governing the education of the children, but if there were, they didn't penetrate the farming communities."
One-room schoolhouses paved the way for the education of our children today and in the future.
An army of 160 men needed 14 million pounds of steel, 380,000 rivets, and nearly a year to build the Valley City High Line Bridge in 1907.
This is the Barnes County Museum, which houses the replica of the Highliner Bridge. Retired farmer Wayne Olson began the Highliner Bridge replica in his basement. With the help of Mike Mickelson, Burlington Northern train conductor, the fascination has become an obsession to complete the project with scenery, including a river underneath and a train on top.
The rail bridge spans 3,838 feet and is just outside the windows of Olson's home on North Central Avenue. The scale works out so that 1 inch of model bridge represents 10 feet of the real bridge.
The plaster and all that is done by another volunteer. That's Kelvin Woolhart. He's our electrical engineer. I keep bugging Wayne. He's our, I call it B&B. It's buildings and bridges. He's the wood constructor, and I'm just like the train master, the train engineer. I keep the things on the track, which is a tough time in itself. They sort of like to follow me out the door when I go home.
Perfect amount of maintenance work that goes with this because of the miles that those little wheels turn. It's unbelievable that it stood up as well as it has, considering the mileage on it. Like you said, he's a great engineer.
Okay, I know this is an ongoing project. If I came back here in 2 years as a guest of the museum, what would I see?
Well, hopefully it's done in 2 years. But we're going to keep continuing going west with the landscaping material. We got to do another tier down the next step where the golf course is, and we get going across where the river's going to come across. And hopefully the Rainbow Bridge is constructed by then. Then the town will have it be all plotted, and the dominant buildings will be set in there along with the mural that we're going to be asking either the high school or the college art class to paint on the backdrop of the southern part of Valley City with the college as the dominant picture on the background. So we can't get that far back. It'd be nice to have 60 by 60 square feet. That way we could have really gotten Valley City down to the pat, but we only went 12 feet wide. So we lost like almost 5/6 of a mile of getting Valley City back to its original form. The old mill down there is all hand-built, constructed. Wayne did that with his fancy tools. The tracks are alive, but they're not the positions that they're supposed to be in. The track was supposed to come off the main line, cross the diamond, then down into the mill where they had a couple switches and tracks that they can maneuver around. It would have been nice to really had that. And we lost the downtown yard, which was over by Smith Lumber, excuse me. Get the right lumber yard. Nice to have that in there because that's where the interurban streetcar used to do all the transfer of the products from the Northern Pacific Depot, which was up here where KOVC is now, out to North Valley where the Sioux Line Depot, and then they did all the work in the yard and make sure they had all the industries spotted in between. And they went out of business in 1953 when the Sioux Line bought them out. And hopefully we could get this to look somewhat like the way Valley City was in the 40s and 50s. And we're going to be short on a lot of it, but the landscaping should all be done. Just the buildings will probably be rare.
Nestled in the center of this quaint Cheyenne River Valley community is a treasure to the past. This treasure is not necessarily a jewel, but rather a valuable resource for young and old alike. The Barnes County Historical Society has established a pioneer museum in the former Valley City Fair Store. As one enters the double glass doors, it is as though you are transcending back in time. The atmosphere is calm and serene, yet displaying a more simple and rugged lifestyle. All aspects of our forefathers' way of living can be found inside this treasure chest. You will find a stately antique organ, soda fountain, doctor's office, school, church, Valley City community, old-time radio, class photos, wartime photos, living room, and war memorabilia. As the millennium has approached, it is important to take note of the many communities in our area that have arisen over the past 100 years. Most early communities began as a result of the building of the railroad. The question is, how did the Northern Pacific Ladies Line get its name?
This map we have here demonstrates Barnes County, Cass County, and Lemoore County. It primarily shows the Northern Pacific Railroad on its main line that came through in 1870. Started at Fargo, went through Castleton, Tower City, Valley City, Jamestown, on its way to the Pacific Ocean. In 1900, the Northern Pacific Railroad created a branch line that went from Castleton 67 miles down to Marion. And along this branch line are all these little towns that sprang up because it was advantageous for them to have a railroad connection. And coincidentally, a lot of these towns were named after women, either the daughters of the landowners of the railroad, of the land, or people who worked on the railroad. And in the case of Marion and Catherine, they are the daughters of the president of the railroad in 1900, Charles Mellon. So we start up here at Castleton, we travel down, we have Myra, we have Emden, Fabian, Alice, Elizabeth, Lucca, Nome, East Edge, Catherine, West Edge, Litchville, and Marion. And a lot of these towns like Myra and Elizabeth never were really towns to begin with. They were more grain loading stations where farmers could bring their grain and get it onto the railroad. So there never really was a town there. And most of these towns are celebrating centennials this year, the ones that have existed. So like Emden has a centennial, and Alice has a centennial. Lucca is not celebrating, neither is Nome. And East Edge is no longer in existence. East Edge is exactly what its name implies. It is the east edge of the Cheyenne River Valley. It was built as a construction work camp and did thrive as a little town up until the 1960s when the general store burned down. But it's the east edge of the valley. You go down into the valley and you cross the Cheyenne River here at Catherine, and you go up the other end of the hill to the other side of the valley and you meet West Edge. West Edge doesn't exist anymore. Technically, there's the town of Hastings, which moved from 8 miles north down to be on the railroad, and it merged with West Edge. So today, technically, West Edge is Hastings. We come down here, Litchville and Marion are the products of Griswold. Griswold, North Dakota, was in Lemoore, and when they heard a railroad was coming through, the town split, and half the people went to Litchville and the other half went to Marion. And so they created those. Lucca was a very interesting city that was actually south on the Sioux line. And when they heard a railroad was coming in on the other direction, they moved themselves north to be on the middle of the two railroads. And so they prospered by having two railroads running through town.
Very few of them are existing today, and so what led to the demise of those communities?
Time. Demise of the communities is, well, the changing eras that we live in. Right now, one farmer can do the job of 8 farmers. And so those 8 farmers had children, you know, eight in their families. So you start multiplying it down, and all of a sudden there's a mass depopulation. And so it's very hard for these folks to subsist in an agricultural economy that's, well, gone severely out the window. But a lot of these towns like Emden and Alice and Nome, they never really got much above 300 people. And right now, like East Edge, probably at its peak had 80 people and is, well, non-existent today. These 2 pictures here are are related to Catherine and Marion Mellon. As mentioned, Catherine and Marion were sisters. They were the daughters of Charles S. Mellon. He was the president of the Northern Pacific Railroad in 1900. And this picture is of the Mellon party. And Mr. Mellon is here. And we're making the assumption that the 2 young ladies in the picture are potentially Catherine and Marion Mellon. No pictures exist of these 2 ladies that we know of. And so it's hopefully a leap of faith to say that this is who they are and what Marion and Catherine look like.
One of the most intriguing facts about a community is where its name originated. History states that the communities of Catherine and Marion were named for the 2 daughters of the Northern Pacific Railroad president, C.S. Mellon. Let's go along with these 2 sisters and revisit the communities that are named for them.